27th of July 2019. I'm here with my favorite son with his London t-shirt. Mickey, who brought you that t-shirt?
So my father recently on return from a small Euro trip he did, first to Glasgow, Scotland, and then to London, England, to visit some family. He brought this back for me as a nice souvenir.
Why did we go to Glasgow, Mickey?
So it was our aunt, well, my father's aunt per se. So my grand aunt, I guess I would be the
Mickey, you're messing up. It's your father's older sister.
your aunt.
Yeah.
And he's my grandfather, so my grand aunt.
Oh, yeah. Okay, good. You're correct.
He went to go visit her for her birthday.
What birthday was it?
100?
Yeah.
100 years. I'm glad to see that she's lived that long. We do come from a pretty strong family. We do actually have a very good lifespan on us, which of course we're thankful for.
Why do you say that, Mickey?
Well, I say that mostly because of my grandparents, from what I've noticed. More so, especially on my father's side of the family. My grandfather lived to
Who's your grandfather?
Wendell Mackenzie Christian.
And who is he?
He was many things. I guess a general statement to say would be a man of service, first and foremost. He was officer in Dominica as well as a volunteer firefighter. And of course, during wartime, he served as a British infantry soldier. He lived to be
Well, actually, he wasn't a volunteer firefighter. He was a station officer. He was a regular.
a regular appointed firefighter.
He was one of the founding members of the modern fire service, along with Wallace Wadsworth Plentyleaf of Margaret, who was in the Royal Air Force.
Okay.
So the British government really relied a lot on him. They sent him to Trinidad. He trained at Piaco Airport and at Wrightson Road in Trinidad. In fact, the picture that was on his funeral program is very distinguished looking picture with his uniform. That was actually in the uniform of the Trinidad Fire Service, not the Dominican Fire Service.
Okay.
That's when he was studying in Trinidad.
All right.
Yeah.
For the position, I assume.
Yes. And he came back and was the first commander of the airport fire service. And then he was in charge of Portsmouth, and in many years he was in charge of Roseau. In fact, the famous fire of February 25th, 1963, he led the detachment into King George V Street when the fire killed Eddie Martyr, George James, and Eric Shillingford, and wounded 19 others. He was the one on command of the brigade. Yeah? So he's a very distinguished man. And your grandmother, tell us about your grandmother. Well, he lived to 90. Tell us about your grandmother.
So my grandmother, who is fortunately still with us,
How old is she?
she is 88.
You're kidding me, man, Mickey. Grandma just turned 90 on June 12th.
Oh, that is 90. Yeah.
But the thing is, you were not there.
I was there though. I came to the party at the house and I came to her thing at the center.
Okay.
Yeah. I was there that night.
Don't get Alzheimer's on me, Mickey.
No. I played the film for you, remember?
Yeah.
Yeah. So she did just turn 90 this year. Again, we are thankful to still have her with us.
What did she do?
She was also a woman of service herself. She worked at the Workshop for the Blind with the Red Cross in Dominica for many years. So, she still recounts stories from that time, especially. That was probably one of the most important things outside of being a mother that she had done in her life, and she always manages to tell me about that and attributes a lot of her experience and the way she treats people from that.
What does family mean to you? What being a member of the Christian family means to you?
Well, growing up, I was taught and learned that the Christian Family brand focuses mainly on education. Knowledge, I guess you could say, is our primary and foremost effort and ideal. So we pride ourselves on that. We try to be as knowledgeable as we can in whatever field that, we choose to go into. Knowledge is power, and in that we derive a great sense of pride and worth from the knowledge that we obtain.
And what are the notable family members that you've learned about growing up?
So that would be George James Christian, mainly my grandfather's, I should say, brothers, as they all sort of played a part in the development of Dominica. His brother Henkel as well. That was still George James that went to Africa as well. Correct?
George James went to Africa.
Yes.
That he was our granduncle, and then Uncle Stewart.
Uncle Stewart.
What is Uncle Stewart's fame?
He was a musician, and he also helped pen the Dominican national anthem, which of course we'll always be proud of. That has created a firm mark in Dominica's history that the Christian family has been a part of.
And of course, Auntie Pearl is a very famous musician too.
Yes, she is.
And she's a very nice person.
She is a very nice person. I always like seeing Auntie Pearl with me.
Yes.
Her
Well,
son was nice too.
I know you went to school in England for a little bit. Tell us about that.
So actually, in 2014, I was given the opportunity by my father, after doing some research, he and I, to become one of the first participants in the Oxford Scholastica program, which actually derived from, I can't remember the prior program that the director, Jamie Deere, who was the head of the program, fathered before, but that was his new program at the time. I was the first and only African-American student to participate in the Oxford Scholastica program, where I studied creative writing under my professor, Ben Kingsley. I stayed at St. Thomas College in Oxford, in the city itself, at a sort of student dormitory.
Of Oxford University.
Yes, that.
So you were at Oxford University in the summer.
I was, yes. And during that summer, you could consider me an actual student of Oxford University itself. Mm-hmm. That was my first time in England, first time in London, first time in Oxford. First time I met a lot of my family members from that side of the family who reside there at their homes.
Give me some of the people you...
First and foremost, my Uncle John, who I always love seeing and always love speaking to.
Uncle John was the miner in the National Union of Mine Workers.
Yes, he was. He spoke to me a bit about that when I stayed with him for a week after my initial schooling. Our cousin, my father's cousin Janet, his cousins Avril.
Janet Grant, cousin Avril. Cousin Catherine.
Yeah.
Your cousin Kelly.
Right, my cousin Kelly.
Her daughter Ruby.
Her boys. Well, I met her boys recently because they weren't born at the time when I had went. But when we went 2 years ago now, wow, in the summer of 2017, was the first time I had met them.
And you met Uncle Jerry Washington, who has a land in Dominica too?
Yes, I did. I also met my cousin Leon, which is cousin... Janet's son. He recently had a baby. Did you meet the baby?
No, I need to call cousin Janet.
Kelly told us that he had a daughter. Mm-hmm. But he also is a computer scientist. He worked with, I believe, Microsoft last time I spoke.
Yeah, and these are our cousins and our family on Mama Christian side, Alberta Christian side. John Baptiste family, which is quite distinguished also, because Uncle John and Uncle Johnson and Uncle Ambrose were mine workers, and they're quite famous. They were the only black family in Nottinghamshire at that time in the mines. And Uncle Johnson became the first black person in British history to be a mine union worker shop steward. And they just did a documentary on him on British television. I showed it to you. That's right. And that's where your Auntie Tutu, that is Mom's sister, has his children like cousin Corbin, who's been in the army. We met him.
Yes.
And Clarin and Chris and McRoy and Carlton and Runa and Verlin. A lot of wonderful family, friends, and families.
All the family members on that side are very kind, very welcoming every time you see them. I do love visiting them in England.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, how did you feel in England, having known that it was the old colonial center?
So initially, I hadn't necessarily viewed it in that capacity. However, a thing that always stuck out to me when I spoke to Uncle John later about my experience there, he told me that he was very proud of me as I was the only, or to this day, to my knowledge, the only family member to ever study at Oxford University, which he drove great pride from. And that meant a lot to me when he told that to me, how proud he was of me. I saw it as an opportunity to further explore interest of mine that is creative writing. The environment was lovely. I loved the city of Oxford, the history there, the architecture, from everything to the street to the bookstores. Blackwell is one that I frequented as a famous bookstore in Oxford. I believe I bought 2 books from there. Both of them I still have. I visited Eton College, also one of the oldest classrooms in the world, where it still has etchings in the small wooden desks that they keep in there. I got to hear their boys' choir as well, and visited the, I guess that would be the city of Eton. So it was a great experience overall. I definitely loved and remember my time fondly at Oxford Scholastica. I also got the opportunity to sit in one of the lecture halls of the university, one of the older lecture halls. For reference, they recently had a short miniseries, I guess you could say, of notable celebrities who spoke and gave lectures in that same hall, where I took participation in a debate that we held there, a mock trial, I guess you could say, where I also performed in that to the best of my ability.
And did you acquit yourself with honor and distinction?
I try to be as articulate as possible with my words when you don't have much preparation. You do find yourself at a bit of a downfall, but I thought I conducted myself very well during that time.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about your mother. What's her name?
So my mother's name is Joan Alberta Robinson.
Tell us a little bit about the Robinson family. What do you know about it?
So the Robinson family, I suppose I could start with their role in Dominica. Her father, he was a man of, I guess, a blue collar guy. He was a man of the earth. He was a carpenter, an engineer of sorts, a builder.
Yeah, he built churches and boxing plants and stuff.
Right.
A supermarket, big supermarket.
Mm-hmm. He contributed to a lot of the standing structures in Dominica still. He did a lot of woodwork that he sold. We have a few of his pieces in the house, the cabinet in our basement, as well as a chest that he made for my mother and father. I personally never met him when my mother was pregnant with me. He unfortunately passed, but I definitely do still feel his presence and his spirit with us.
And what do you know about the Robinson family and its contributions to Dominica?
The Robinson family and its contribution. Well, my grandmother, she was a baker. She had her own bakery. So a lot of people, if anything, they were more local names, I suppose. Just know
She was a James.
She was
a maiden name.
Right.
Ernestina James, but she's Ernestina Robinson. So you knew her more because she took care of you a little bit as a baby.
Right. She did. I did have the opportunity to meet her before. Unfortunately, she passed in 06?
09.
09? Wasn't Grandpa? Grandpa was 09.
Grandpa died in 11.
11. Wow. Okay. Yeah. So I did have more time with her. She was a bit ill for most of my life, but I did have the opportunity to meet her for the time that I was.
As you know, the Robinson family, where did they descend from?
They descended from, well, at least, yes, my mother's father, he descended from Ireland.
Yes, from Ireland. These are the Irish that were deported to the Caribbean by the British.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, the Robinsons were very much involved in agriculture and education. One of the uncles taught me surveying. And one of the uncles taught me carpentry and woodwork.
Right.
So they were very much, one was an education officer, Belgrave Robinson. So they were very much civil servants and nation builders as well.
Exactly.
So what is your commitment as a young person of African descent, of Dominican descent, someone who's had a great opportunity in education to continue the legacy of your mother's side of the family and the father's side of the family? What's your obligation?
My obligation would also be to continue the legacy of service that's been set forth by both my father and mother's family in the best way I know how. So before I have to do that, I have to prepare myself with the education that I'm currently earning and go forward in the world, hopefully to inspire and affect those who I can in greater service of my community.
And where are you at school now?
So currently I'm attending Bowie State University in Bowie, Maryland.
And is Bowie State University part of the University of Maryland system?
It is an HBCU, a historically black college, for those unfamiliar with the term. I believe is not the only one, is UMES.
University of Maryland Eastern Shore is also an HBCU.
Right.
So they're one of the 12 schools of the 12 Maryland schools. The better known one being, of course, University of Maryland College Park.
Right.
But there are two HBCUs at least, maybe three if you count Coppin State.
Coppin, yeah.
Yeah, Morgan is not part of the system, but Morgan is also an HBCU.
Yes,
What are you studying?
I'm studying biology for undergraduate school. Once I leave undergrad, I hope to go to medical school and later earn a doctorate in neuroscience or psychology, essentially. But neuroscience would be the actual.
Why do you like neuroscience, Mickey? Because you seem to be fixated.
I more or less draw inspiration from the application of neuroscience. The mind is a very powerful thing. It's the most powerful tool that we have as human beings innately. However, we still do not know a great deal about it. It's a very complex thing, and a lot of facets of it do elude us. So I've always drawn interest in that, and the sort of why we as human beings do the things that we do and how we function as a greater understanding of our society as a whole. I personally believe if we take the time to study the why, study the function, study the capabilities of our minds, we can build a greater society as a whole, not necessarily as individuals in the tribal sense that we tend to operate in, but as a unit. That's personally why I have great interest in psychology and therefore neuroscience.
And do you have a blog?
I do have a blog, Marvels of the Mind, that does focus on neuroscience, focus on psychology, as well as other things of interest to me, which will either be some social aspects or political.
How important is it for young African Americans or young people of any race to be sort of focused on sharpening their minds and having a good sense of brain chemistry and being able to stay away from mind-altering substances that might destroy the mind?
Well, first and foremost, I would always advocate for anyone to better themselves through knowledge. education, and education doesn't necessarily mean having to be within a structured system like college. Technically, you learn every day.
By the way, I didn't ask, what year are you in college?
This will be my junior year in the coming month.
Okay.
Right. Again, like I was saying,
and what area of studies you're engaged in right now at Bowie State?
Biology.
Okay. And what are your grades like?
My grades are doing pretty well. Finished with a flat 3.0 sophomore year. So that's my cumulative as of right now.
So we're going to try to get to a 3.5, 4.0 maybe?
That's the goal.
All right. Any particular things that your parents did to encourage your intellectual pursuits?
Will send me to Oxford for one. I'll always thank them for that. From elementary to middle school, I was in private Catholic school in the Archdiocese of Washington. I attended St. Ambrose in Cheverly, Maryland, as well as St. Mary's of the Assumption later on in Upper Marlboro, Maryland. At one point, I was going to Bishop McNamara High School in Forestville, Maryland, which is another private Catholic school. I was sent to Wise. Dr. Henry A. Wise Jr. is the full title.
And he was at Tuskegee Airmen.
Yes, he was.
And why did your father and mother think it wise to go to Wise?
Initially, they were sending my sister there as well, but they thought I would also benefit from the public school educational system.
Yeah. Why is it important to support public education?
Well, there's, I guess you could say, a multitude of reasons for that. Supporting public education would, in some senses, allow the community as a whole to take greater stock in it. By sending more of their children there, I guess they would have a deeper involvement and maybe see where it has deficiencies, I guess, and pick up on that a lot simpler in order to, make it better not only for their children, but children that come after them.
Mm-hmm. Very good, Makonnen. And tell us about your role and Samara's role, if any, in writing and in the Dominican Academy of Arts and Sciences and in the Dominican Diaspora Movement for Development.
So the DAS, or Dominica Academy of Arts and Sciences, was formed when Samara and I were very young. Around the same time, we had just published our book, Our Visit to the Island, at a very young age, my sister being 9, myself only recently turning 6, I think at the time it officially came out. The both of us played a role sort of as, I guess you could say, future successors to the DAS, to the efforts put forward by them in order to educate and build a sort of brand of excellence for Dominica through education, through arts and sciences, through things that both Dominica has the capability to do, but I guess at the time we're just lacking in structure in order to do so.
How important do you think is structure? And can you tell us of some of the organizations in Dominica we were involved in that sought to bring structure rather to young people?
First and foremost, my father participating in it himself, the Dominica Cadet Corps. He went in sort of a one-man campaign in order to help revitalize the Cadet Corps, along with later on with the assistance of Major Francis Richards, or Uncle Richo as I call him. So they helped revitalize that and help rebuild that institution within Dominica as sort of I guess the American equivalent would be ROTC, sort of a paramilitary training unit that also helps security as well as just building discipline within young men and women in Dominica.
When you went home on holidays, did I bring you to join the cadets?
You did. I did spend a few days with the cadets.
And what was that like? Tell us about that.
It was different at the time. I was in Boy Scouts, which isn't the same. Again, the American equivalent of the Cadet Corps would be ROTC. I personally had not participated in ROTC. I was a Scout, which I guess you could say is the level below that.
And you're a Cub as well?
I was a Cub and a Boy Scout.
Did you get an Eagle of, what do you call it?
Arrow of Light? The Arrow of Light achievement, which is the highest honor that a Cub Scout can earn. During Boy Scouts, I was in it for a bit. It did teach me a lot of useful skills. I did like the outdoor aspect of it at first. I believe what eventually drove me away from it was the sort of politics that would happen within it. I did appreciate that they were trying to teach young men and women a certain sense of structure and discipline, as well as useful pragmatic skills for survival. They definitely had a lot of good ideals in terms of their motto, always be prepared, which I still think I like to carry to this day. Is just sort of as a useful thought to have or idea to have throughout life. Preparation is always important.
Yeah. Colonel McGee said 4 things. That's Colonel McGee, who's a original Tuskegee, a documented original Tuskegee Airman at DOTA. At the breakfast of May 25th, he talked about the 4 P's. Perceive,
Perceive,
prepare, perform, And persevere. What do you understand by being able to perceive?
To perceive, initially, as I heard him say it, I thought of it as a problem solving, a very adept one at that. So perceive, I see it as you have to view and understand your, I guess you could say, if we're using it as problem solving, your situation.
Your situation. Situational awareness.
Situational awareness is the first and foremost.
What are the needs? What's the environment?
Exactly. What is the actual issue that you want to attack or address?
Prepare.
Of course, is gathering the necessary utilities, necessary tools, information, research,
Education.
or research in order to, again, perform following into that in order to work on solving the problem or the issue or whatever task you have at hand. Again, it applies to many things, but using it as a problem solving tool to solve the issue, to work out the issue and persevere. Of course, following through until the issue is resolved, or maybe even afterwards if you could derive something even greater from the problem.
So the idea is you don't give up.
Right. Persevere is the follow through and the continuation.
That's right. Okay. Well, Mickey, any final words? I mean, we've had a wide-ranging interview talking about your education, your family background. What are some of the problems we face now as an American society, politically and economically, and what are some of the challenges you see and some of the hopes for a better future? And that goes for Dominica as well.
Okay. Well, I believe, I'll address it this way. America and Dominica are currently suffering from similar issues in the sense of leadership. They are both democratically run countries, and with that, a lot of that falls on citizens. So when citizens make better educated and better informed decisions on leadership, they can then move forward with better leadership, which of course cycles and helps in return a better country. People first and foremost need to educate themselves on how things work, how the government works, how society works, how things even outside of their country works, because of course that affects what happens within it as well. So when citizens make better informed decisions, we can have better leadership and have a better community as a whole, or better government, or better country. So I guess that I would say is a very persistent issue in both Dominica and America that they share.
Yes, indeed. Tell us a little bit about some of your cousins that you have and some of their names and what they do.
Sure. Well, first and foremost, I'll always advocate the success of my cousin Kwame Christian, my father's brother Samuel Christian's son, his first son. He's a great public speaker now, actually. As a motivational speaker, he has seminars on negotiation, which is something that he does very well. He actually has a classic law degree as well as passed the bar in the state of Ohio. He's a classically trained lawyer. He did have his own practice for a while, but is moving now toward the...
Is indeed the founder and director of the American Negotiations Institute?
That is correct. He also has a very popular podcast that you can find on the Apple Podcast app for Android. I believe they have a similar app on Google Play that you can also listen to it as well. He travels all over the country recently for that, and he's found great success in it, and I always wish him the best. He always gives me advice, if need be, or when I contact him. His brother Kobe is a communications expert. Kobe has seemed to take a very professional role in his local government. He's worked on many a campaign for Cincinnati as well as the surrounding areas in Ohio. So they're both very communications-oriented people.
And those are the children of Dr. Sam Christian and Dr. June Christian.
That is correct.
Yes.
For my father's oldest living brother, Lawson, his son, Tyler, is currently at Cornell. It'll be his third year as well. Since we were the same.
What's he studying at Cornell?
I believe he's also studying biology.
No, it's mechanical engineering.
That's right, mechanical engineering. Yeah. He's doing very well with his success there. We're of course happy that Tyler, got into and continues to do well at Cornell. Mm-hmm. His older sister, what's Nikki doing? Do you know? Well, my cousin Trudy, who is the daughter of my father's unfortunately passed brother Wellsworth, Dr. Wellsworth Christian. She is a great educator within Dominica. She recently told us that she will be taking tutelage at her alma mater, actually, in order to become a dean later on. So we're very proud of her.
She's the daughter of the principal of the Dominica Grammar School, Alicia Abraham Christian, who was a student at the Sixth Form College with me. And Trudy, all through her high school years, was first in her class and was the valedictorian. We're very proud of her. Recently, she, I think, was the director of the Debate Society and ran the debate issue on, I think, a debate or forum on electoral reform in Dominica. Mm-hmm. So she has certainly kept the banner flying high.
Yes.
And, she's lived with us, and we're very proud of Trudy.
She's always been a great leader in academics, for sure.
So, as you conclude, any comments on family and on leadership and service?
Family is always important. You have to be very aware of your family and keep good relationships are very pertinent. It's very important to have a good relationship with your family. They're your first friends in a sense, and they're the first people who have influence and help shape who you are.
There's somebody you didn't tell us much about. What about your sister Samora? Tell us a little bit about her. Where is she going to school?
So my sister is finishing up her years at the University of Maryland Eastern Shore, which again is another HBCU. Where she's studying human ecology with a focus in fashion merchandising. My sister has always had a great flair for fashion, as well as she's the more social out of the two of us. I'll always be the first to admit that. So with that skill, she has taken to a way where she can navigate a lot of life's, I guess, more complex social constructs, which I've always found, I've always admired her for. So with that, she hopes to create a greater influence. She has a very well-kept blog that she does. She posts on there very regularly, her fashion blog. So she wants to go into fashion journalism and hopefully have her own paper or magazine.
Her fashion blog is 3media.com.
.com, yes.
Yes, indeed. And of course, Samora has been a great leader.
Mm-hmm.
We're very proud. Mom and I are very proud of you, and we're very proud of your leadership and your kindness and your grace. And we always encourage you. And as we conclude, any final thoughts?
My final thoughts will always be to anyone at large is know what you want to do, know what you have to do, and know what you need to do in order to get there. And once you have these things, your motivation is set, your goal is clear, you can't let anyone stop you.
God bless you, Miggy. God bless you. Love you.
Love you too, Dad.